Hello, pirates. Today's topic is energy transfer in ecosystems and food webs. So what we're looking at today is how does the energy actually flow through an ecosystem? What you guys want to be familiar with is some basic energy vocabulary that I'm sure that you guys have been familiar with for many years. When we look at these terms, they are terms like the food chain, a food web, a trophic level, an autotroph, a heterotroph, an herbivore, an omnivore, a carnivore, a scavenger, a decomposer, or an invasive species. What you have on page 135 is you have the term, you have the definition, and then you want to provide an example of one of these things. So, a food chain, for example, this is a single line of energy that is transferring energy. So, for example, we're going to start with the bottom of the food chain, which is going to be the plants, our producers. And maybe we're looking at like a piece of some vegetation, like let's do some berries. So we'll have some berries. Okay, so I'm going to have some beautiful beauty berries, a native berry to Florida, and a lot of animals in Florida like to eat the beauty berries. So the energy is going to go from the berry, and something that might like to eat it is a bird. So I'm going to put a little bird here. Let's see here, maybe it's a little cardinal or a robin that comes down and eats the bird. So I'm going to have, here's my little bird, happy little bird. It's eating the berries. Put his legs in the wrong place, I think. All right. And then what happens to our friend the bird? But they get eaten by a Florida panther. Okay, so a Florida panther comes along and eats them. Let's see, my Florida panther today is going to look a little orange, so it separates from the tiger. So here is my little Florida panther. Or it could just be your house cat. Oh no, it looks like a dog. Okay, poor panther. All right, so this would be like one food chain, the worst panther ever drawn. All right, a food web is a series of these food chains all working together. So certainly this bird is not the only thing that eats berries, and this Florida panther isn't the only thing that eats the birds. So a food web is going to have like all the different things that could be in the food chain, and it's going to have them all interconnected. So I'm just going to draw a web to kind of represent that. All right, the trophic levels are the actual feeding levels in the food web. So, are you on the first level, the second level, the bottom? And we represent them with a pyramid, which we'll talk a little bit more about tomorrow. Our autotrophs are important. They produce their own energy through the process of photosynthesis. We also call them producers. So an autotroph is the same thing as a producer. They go through photosynthesis. So you want to take a moment and see, can you guys remember the equation for photosynthesis? And where does it happen? While you think about that for a minute, I'm just going to draw a plant over here to just kind of represent this producer. So here we have a little plant growing. And it'll have its roots down into the ground. All right, so the equation for photosynthesis, if you guys remember, it's taking water and carbon dioxide, it goes through photosynthesis, and it produces sugar, C6H12O6, and oxygen. Don't forget it, the EOC is coming up. All right, heterotrophs are organisms that have to eat something else to obtain their energy. They're also called consumers. So if you're a heterotroph, hetero means different. It means that you eat something other than yourself. Autotroph means I feed myself. Okay, so example of a heterotroph up there, something that has to eat other food, could be, like we said, a bird. Birds don't go through photosynthesis. They can't make their own food. So here's our little bird. We're doing terrible with bird drawings today. Here we go. It's turned into kind of a duck. I'll give him a wider beak. There we go. All right. Herbivores are going to be things that only eat plants. So things that only eat plants are herbivores. Omnivores are going to eat both. Carnivores are going to eat only meat. Scavengers are going to have eat organisms that are already dead and they're killed by something else. So a scavenger doesn't make their own food. They don't kill their own food. They are going to eat dead animals that were killed by something else. Think of those turkey vultures. Decomposers are going to be things that break down the dead plants and animals. These are going to be things like bacteria and funguses. And then an organism that invades a new area, takes over, is an invasive species. So this is also a key term that we're going to use here. So they invade another area, they take over the ecosystem. They do this by competing with the native plants and animals, and it changes the ecosystem. So what you guys want to do is draw some pictures to help you remember what those are. And then on page 134, you guys are just going to look at what you guys know about ecosystems today as far as the food webs. So on page 134, you guys have this printout on food webs. So this is going to go on your left side. And you're going to look at a food web in the kelp forest. Now, on the EOC, they are big fans of an aquatic ecosystem. So that's why we chose the kelp forest. And what we're looking at, you guys are going to look at the food web, and then you're going to figure out where do these organisms get their energy, and energy classification. What are they? Are they a heterotroph, an herbivore, an omnivore, a carnivore? So figure out what they are. And then after that, we're going to divide them up into the producers, the primary consumers, the secondary consumers, and the tertiary consumers. So when you're looking at the food web, so we're looking at multiple feeding relationships, we have arrows here, and the arrows are showing us the flow of the energy. So the flow of energy is being shown through the arrows. Now you guys can see here is our producers. So our producers here, we've got kelp and other seaweeds, and you can see the energy is going from the kelp to larger crabs, or kelp to algae. It's going from kelp to small herbivores, kelp to sea urchins. And we can kind of watch that flow of energy from one organism to another, all the way up. And so we can look at the sea otter, for example, and we can look to see where he gets his food. The sea otter is getting its food from larger fishes. They are getting their food from crabs. So they're eating the larger crabs. They're eating sea stars, sea urchins, and abalones. So you guys want to go through and figure out what they eat, and then figure out what they are. And you can see the sea otter, are they eating any of the vegetables? No. The vegetation of the producers? No. So this would make the sea otter a carnivore. Okay. Now what you want to do then, after you work through where they get their food from and their energy classification, you guys are going to figure out where they're going to go on our little distribution of organisms here. So you're going to put the producers at the bottom. So for example, the kelp and seaweed. And then who's the primary consumers? Like who is only eating the kelp and the seaweed? So you're going to divide these organisms right here across this distribution. The otter, he's at the very top, so he would be a tertiary consumer. So these are going to be mostly the carnivores. So up here we'll have our sea otter. Our secondary consumers typically, but not always, they typically are the omnivores, but not always. For example, we're omnivores, but we're at the top of the food chain. And then the primary consumers, these are typically the herbivores. And then at the bottom we have the producers. Okay, so these are, our autotrophs, things that are going through photosynthesis. Now at the bottom, we've got our ultimate source of energy altogether, and that is the sun. So the sun's energy is converted from light energy into chemical energy, glucose, through the process of photosynthesis. So this right here, this is light energy. And so this whole energy transfer works by light energy being converted through photosynthesis and then moving through the food chain. Okay, so this is how energy is transferred in an ecosystem. What you guys want to do is you want to complete figuring out where things get their energy and their classification, distribute them across the producers, primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers here, and kind of think that the energy is going from this level to this level, and up to this level. And what we're going to do next time is we'll look at trophic levels, but this is what you're going to submit, okay? Page 134 when it's complete. Reach out if you guys have any questions.